Casey Joyner, ESPN.com senior NFL insider here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Shout out to all our qualifiers today. We have another chance for you to qualify coming up in 24 minutes. Bob in Mays Landing, Chris in Margate, Peter in Atlantic City, Joe in Seaville, Chris in Hamilton, and others qualified on today's show. Congratulations to them. We got over 99 tickets, so we are going to have some bonus tickets and have some fun. It's all happening at 99 Bottles Wednesday, live at Vagabond Kitchen and Tap House, the Sports Bash, and you on 97.3 ESPN. South Jersey's home for Eagles and Saints. Let's get it in. Let's do it now. Casey Joyner on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline, 97.3 ESPN. And Casey, 4-5, Philadelphia getting ready for an 8-1 Saints team who's ripped off 8 straight games. On the surface, it doesn't look good. But let's start with the Eagle offense, which has really struggled this year. They scored over 30 points one time this year after scoring over 30 9 times last season. 9 times. Where can they attack this Saints defense?
That's a tough call because the Saints are playing pretty well on defense in a lot of places. But if I had to pick a place where I thought they might be able to get there, it's New Orleans doesn't have a very good pass rush. I do these grades for ESPN's fantasy section in their plus section for matchups as far as how they impact blocking matchups or the impact fantasy relevance. And the Saints ranked 23rd over the past 5 weeks in pass rushing. Now, the Eagles haven't been pass blocking particularly well, but the Saints can't get a pass rush, and if you can block them, then you can maybe get New Orleans into a kind of a shootout game that maybe they're not going to like to get into because they've got some weaknesses at receiver, at least they're thin at receiver.
Yeah, they're thin at receiver, but they do have a really good one. Let's keep it on that New Orleans defensive side of the ball. Doug Peterson said this week that he wants to use Josh Adams more. Is this the week? I know they're number 1 against the rush, but is that because teams are behind and don't run on them, or is it because they're very good against the run?
Because they're very good against the run. New Orleans ranks, I mentioned those metrics there, New Orleans ranks 7th in my run defense metrics over the past 5 weeks. They're pretty strong. They're a team that has some good metrics against the run. Having said that, they have some subpar metrics against the run too, but I still don't think that's the way to go with them because this is one of those games where I just don't think Philadelphia's defense can be trusted. So if you're the offense, you got to be thinking, you don't try and think we can win a 23-20 game against these guys. You got to hope we win in 35-31. But I'm looking at not running the ball. I'm looking at attacking some coverage weaknesses because they do have some coverage weaknesses to go after.
All right, you got Tate, you got Aguilar, you got Jeffrey, you got Ertz. Is this a matchup that's favorable for Philadelphia? I mean, they don't have a great pass rush. Okay, can the Eagles get open?
Eli Apple rates, as I've mentioned over the years, I've got these different ratings for players on defense, red, yellow, green. Red, avoid them if you're looking at matchups. It's one to stay away from. Yellow is an okay matchup, and green is a very favorable. I've got Eli Apple rated as a green-rated matchup. I've got P.J. Williams, who's a nickel cornerback, rated as a green-rated matchup as well. So that would bode well for Aguilar against Williams, Jeffrey against Apple. Again, people can get moved around and they can face different people in coverage, but those are 2 players that you should be able to go after. The only player who's strong again in their secondary is Von Bell. He ranks as a red-rated strong safety, but I still think if you've got Zach Ertz, you should be able to go there too because I think Ertz is matchup proof at this point. So I'm the Eagles. I'm not scared of the secondary.
All right, Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Let's look at the Eagles' defense. They got a tough chore. They struggled in pass coverage, particularly in the fourth quarter when Darby went out. They already have Mills out. This week, Mills is going to be out. Darby's going to be out. They'll get Sidney Jones back, so it's going to be Jones, Russell, Douglas, Avante, Maddox. I mean, they're still very young in that secondary. But, all right, New Orleans only has the one real weapon in Michael Thomas. How is this pass game stacked up against this Eagle secondary?
I don't have one play where I'm not doubling Michael Thomas, or not one. I don't care what it is. If he's blocking, I want to put 2 guys on him. I don't care. I want every single play to have because he's a catch paster where I think what it is he could not catch. The next 10 passes could be thrown his way and they could be incomplete, and he would still be setting a record for a catch rate over the past 10 years. I mean, he's a phenomenal catch rate on both vertical and short passes. So I'm doubling him in everything because look at their other options. Now, Traquan Smith, totally a vertical guy, only vertical. That's all he does. He doesn't catch short passes. So play 9 yards off him, let him catch dink and dunk stuff, and see if he can do something else, because I don't think he can. Got Austin Carr as their nickel. Who's Austin Carr? Exactly. So you don't really have to worry about him. Watson is a hit-or-miss tight end. So
you didn't give me a chance to even think about it.
Yeah. You know, I mean, they just don't have they've got one guy who they can throw to. Mind you, Thomas can beat you all by himself, and Drew Brees is that good. But matchup-wise, I'm not looking at that going, okay, I know Philadelphia has some problems, but none of these are guys besides Thomas where I go, okay, that's somebody who can really tear our defense apart.
Okay, Kamara, this guy's a handful. Last week he had 56 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns, caught 4 balls for 46 yards, and that's a down week for him. So Philly's linebackers, I think, have been a problem this year. What do they do with Kamara?
I think I've mentioned before that I've got that metric called good blocking yards per attempt, measures how productive you are when you get good run blocking. Eagles defense has had a problem of late. In the last 3 of the last 4 games, they've allowed a double-digit good blocking yards per attempt, which means they're winning their blocking battles often enough, but when they don't win their blocking battles, the other team is breaking out big gainers. You really have to be careful about that with Kamara and Ingram, too. Ingram's capable of hitting those big plays, too. So I really want the safeties for the Eagles. If I'm them, I want to make sure my safeties are coming up and making what they need to stop in the running game. And linebackers, I don't really want the linebackers at this point. You want them to win point of attack battles, but really I want those guys to not just win battles, make sure you stay in your gas, make sure you stay in your lanes so that they're getting good blocking, they're getting 6 and 7 yards of carry, not 10 or 11, because that's what's been killing the Eagles the past few weeks.
Casey Joyner, our Friday conversation, looking at the Eagles and the Saints. No Tron Armstead. Eagles have I guess, I don't know what the metrics are saying about their pass rush. It's not as good as last year.
No, it's not, and it's something that that needs to get worked on. But again, I still think this is a game where the Eagles, they need to be able to trust that they're going to be able to get in this kind of a shootout game. That even if if it puts their corners in the coverage issues, and even if they have pass rushing issues, it doesn't matter. They just have to find a way to get some sort of pass rush and get into that sort of contest, because shootouts can be 50-50 propositions. So this study for ESPN's Insider Section a few years ago that looked at shootout matchups for even the best offenses in NFL history, and they're about a 50-50 proposition if you take like one team. I think it was one team, like 83 Redskins were skewed the study, but if you took them out, it was just barely over 50% of the games where it was a 50-50 proposition for these powerhouse offenses. If I'm the Eagles, that's what I'm aiming for and saying, okay, I think I can get a pass rush enough to do something, because I don't think the Saints want to get in those kind of shootout games if they can help it.
Casey, you look at the Eagles in terms of the way that they have struggled in the secondary, as we talked about, but I think they've struggled to tackle. And you talked about Kamara and you talk about Michael Thomas. If you don't tackle against this team, you're going to be in big trouble. But what I want to ask you is, can you get to Brees? Okay, if he's just going to dump things off, sure. But is he the kind of quarterback, is this the kind of offense that you can get to Brees? I don't see that being the case, right?
His sack rates are very low. They're second in sack rate over the past 5 weeks. Only 0.8% of the time are they being sacked. And Brees does throw the ball. You look at how much average time in pocket that they have over the past 5 weeks. 2.2 seconds average time in pocket. It's not very much, but it's 19th. It's not one of the best rates in the league. So he does tend to get the ball out very quickly. So that's an issue. But again, that's where you want to go. Fine, we're going to put 2 on Thomas, and we're going to attack. We're hopefully going to tackle him if he catches dink and dunk passes. I want to see, Traquan Smith, can you catch dink and dunk passes?
Yeah.
Because I don't think you can. Austin Carr, who are you? Again, who are you? You're nobody. And I want to see, can he catch them? Make Ben Watson catch those things. I think if you make them do a bunch of dink and dunk passes to the receivers, you're doing fine. Problem is, they can do dink and dunk passes to Alvin Kamara too, and they can get that blocking in front of them. So I think the screen game is going to be big for them too.
Do you blitz Brees? Is it because the Eagle fans go crazy? Schwartz doesn't blitz. He puts those guys back 10 yards, 15 yards off the ball. Do you blitz Drew Brees?
No, because we're talking pass rush rates for the Eagles over the past 5 weeks. The Eagles are 5th in pressure rate over the past 5 weeks, 34.2%, and they're 5th in quarterback contact rate. How often they're hitting a quarterback? 18%. If you're doing that well up front, even if you know that's going to drop some against New Orleans, fine. If it drops some, it drops some. But I don't think you want to blitz Brees. I think you want to sit back and I think you want to make him be patient, because he's not the strongest arm quarterback. But over the years, he doesn't like the idea that he's not a strong arm quarterback, and he likes to say, "I'm going to go vertical." So fine, bait him on some vertical passes, give him the short stuff, and see if he'll throw 12 straight short passes in a row. I don't think he wants to. And then if he throws it up in the air, go see if you can get a pick or two, because he's prone to making mistakes like that.
Yeah, I know. Breeze has been excellent. The completion percentage is almost 80%. It seems like it's ridiculous the way he's gone. But that's a lot of the rules in the game this year.
Yeah, it is. He gives the rules, and because defenses are not playing the kind of defenses they should, they're playing way too many shell coverages, and that's in part because they didn't have good. They don't practice anymore in the preseason.
Right.
Don't pull hairs out there. So I think that's a big part of it. And I think that, but again, I think New Orleans they want. I keep coming back to this. They want to be a run-first team is what they want to be. They'll throw if they have to, but they want to be a run-first team. And one thing though about the Eagles, one advantage I'm looking at here of the numbers.
Yep.
New Orleans over the past 5 weeks, they're 28th. Their defense is 28th in good blocking rate allowed. So I think that they've done well over the course of the year, but over the course of the past 5 weeks, they're not doing so well there. You don't get many yards when you get good blocking, but you can get good enough blocking. So if I'm them, I want to make New Orleans also think about the run, if nothing else. Make them respect it because they're not stopping it very well, and see if you can hit the guys on the top.
Biggest advantage in this game for either team is what?
The biggest advantage is New Orleans has all the powerhouse of people. Alvin Kamara is their biggest advantage. He's the best player in both these teams. But I still think the biggest positional advantage is for the Eagles in that their receivers are bigger play receivers as a group than New Orleans receivers. I think New Orleans has a big play. They can call a big game like that, but talent-wise, I think the Eagles have a much bigger edge there, and that's what they got to lean on this week.
Okay, something's got to give here. Ready for these numbers? The Saints at home, when they've entered with a winning record, they're 8-1. They're 23 straight wins, 18-4-1 against the spread. The Eagles' last 32 games, they have only lost once by more than a touchdown. They are over a touchdown underdog, +8. So something's going to have to give in this game. Do you see a blowout, or the Eagles keep it close, or the Eagles upset?
I think that I don't think the Eagles will win this game just because New Orleans is the number one team in the league, and I rank them first in my power rankings for ESPN this week. And they're that good, and they're good in so many different ways. And again, it's at home, so you add those advantages together. But I think Philadelphia avoids the blowout if they decide to get in a shootout. If they try and slow this thing down and see if they can get New Orleans to slow this thing down, I think they will regret that. Don't try and out-trick these guys and things. Just try and go vertical and get aggressive against these guys and try and punch them in the mouth. As Jimmy Johnson said all those years ago, when you're facing a big gorilla, what do? You hit him with everything you got. I think that's what Philadelphia needs to do in this game.
All right, there's a lot of other interesting games in week number 11. Let's go through the schedule. Casey Joyner, ESPN.com senior NFL insider here. Let's first look back at the Green Bay-Seattle game. We see Green Bay go on the road. They get out fast, but Seattle comes back and holds on, and they pull off a big home win. Green Bay now 4-5-1.
McCarthy, how does he still have a job? I mean, the number of times where he's had screw-ups, I mean, maybe just to bash Andy Reid for what he did play for clock management and such. I mean, why only had one time out late in the game, why they didn't challenge the play. I mean, just a number of factors and things. This isn't the year that McCarthy gets fired. If I'm Aaron Rodgers, I'm just hanging it up.
Dallas is at Atlanta. Interesting game. Two teams, 4-5. Atlanta, playing better offensively. They kind of struggled last week. Dallas with a big win. Everybody was counting them out. They get a road win. Now they got to go on the road again. Can they win twice in a row on the road, this time at Atlanta?
Atlanta's defensive metrics have been much better of late, and Matt Ryan, if it wasn't, in most seasons, if it wasn't for how he performed very early in the year, it wasn't for Gurley and Mahomes, Matt Ryan right now would be a strong MVP candidate. He can still close the gap down the stretch. I think that's a big difference for them if they win that one.
Carolina's going to Detroit. Big game for Carolina. They're 6-3, firmly as the number one team in that. I say firmly, they're the number one wild card team, but they're still in the division race, and they play the Saints twice. If they want to think about winning the division, they got to win this road game at Detroit.
And they probably should. They've got the fourth most favorable blocking matchup in the league this week because Detroit over the past 5 weeks, they're ranked 28th in overall front seven play. They're not doing well against the run. They're not doing well in pass rush. They're going to get Darius Slay back this week. That's going to help them, but that's not enough to stop Carolina because Carolina wins with their offensive line, so they win handily.
I like this game in the South, Tennessee at Indianapolis. Colts have been playing well. Tennessee, letdown game. They just had a huge win over the Patriots, so now they're on the radar. But this Colts team has been tough at home.
This Colts team has been fantastic at home. They've got a terrific offensive line over the past 5 weeks. They are the best offensive line in the NFL. They've not allowed a sack in 4 straight games. The run block is equally strong. Tennessee's run defense is first in the league in my advanced run metrics of the past 5 weeks, but Tennessee's pass defense hasn't been anywhere near as good. So I think Luck throws 40-plus times, and they win that game.
Looking at Tampa Bay, this game doesn't have a lot of playoff implications, but Tampa's on the road at the Giants. Giants got that win last week. Can they make it 2 in a row at home? You know, the Giants are actually favored in the game. It's the first time they're favored all season long against the Bucs.
I can understand why they might be favored against the Bucs, but the Bucs, look, they had 500 yards and only 3 points last week. They're capable of putting up 500 yards every single week, and you're going to put up more than 3 points in most of those contests. And I think the Giants just don't have as much firepower. So I think Tampa comes up with throwing the ball vertical a ton, and they get in the kind of game the Giants can't keep up.
Houston, a lot of Eagle fans rooting for the Texans this week. They got to go on the road. Everybody thought Washington would lose last week, but they went on the road, put their big boy pants on, and found a way to win with all the injuries. Now they come home. They're firmly in control of that division. 2 games up on Philadelphia, on Dallas and Philadelphia right now, but a tough Houston team, 6 straight. Do the Texans make it 7 at Washington?
I picked Washington to win the game because when it comes to close games like this, I tend to pick the home team, and Houston has some offensive line issues, so I think Washington can do well there. But the problem is that Washington's banged up, and Houston can, if they can get those offensive players going, if they can get that, if they can get Hopkins and Miller going, they can get that kind of game going that Washington doesn't want to get into, something Tampa couldn't do last week. So I think Houston's got a very good chance to win the game, but I did pick Washington.
This game was supposed to be Sunday night. It got flexed out because Jacksonville's that bad right now. What has happened to the Jags? They're at home. Pittsburgh's really rolling, but do they go on the road to Jacksonville and pick up a W?
Jacksonville, their biggest problem right now is that their defense has been atrocious. Right now, they rank, their blocking has been atrocious. They're 32nd in the league over the past 5 weeks in blocking. They're terrible run blocking, terrible pass blocking. In fantasy, I'm thinking of putting Fournette into a flex position this week. I wrote about that for ESPN's fantasy section. Check that out in Plus. But I think that's going to be a huge edge for Pittsburgh, and they win that handily.
Cincinnati got beat handily last week. Now they go to Baltimore. This Bengals team seems to be reeling. The Baltimore Ravens, I don't know what their identity is. Is Flacco going to play? This one is kind of up in the air, but a big game in the North.
Flacco probably won't play. I think he's listed as doubtful with the hip injury. They have Lamar Jackson supposed to be taking his place, but Lamar Jackson's questionable with an illness, so they may end up going to Robert Griffin III. Cincinnati's got some problems, but they still have more players all around. In Baltimore, if they're playing a backup quarterback, even though I know they're at home, I just think Cincinnati's got more firepower and should win that game.
Oakland heads to Arizona. No playoff implications here. Arizona, of course, the young kid. Oakland really playing out the string, which has been a very, very disappointing season for them.
Their defense is so bad. They're almost breaking my rankings chart from when I do my defense special teams rankings for ESPN's fantasy section. They are just that bad where it's almost like I've got to reset the chart. But I think Arizona's got more than enough on offense to be able to take advantage of that, and I think Fitz is going to have a huge game. I think Rosen will be good. And I think David Johnson's going to have a fantastic game too.
Denver's at L.A. The Chargers have been playing really well. Denver, this is just one of those teams. Denver, I look at Philly a lot, and Denver won the Super Bowl. Now, they had Peyton Manning, and then they just fell apart. But since the Super Bowl, they've been pretty bad. So it shows you that you could win a Super Bowl and then kind of fall apart. Now, the Eagles have Wentz. That should keep them in the mix at least. Denver's had all sorts of quarterback problems, but that's not the case for the Chargers.
Yeah, Denver won the Super Bowl because they had because their fantastic defense that one year. Their defense has not been doing anywhere near as well of late, at least in good blocking rate. They're 26th in good blocking rate allowed, so that's not a good place for them to be. However, they are 4th in pass pressure rate over the past 5 weeks. They are 2nd in sack rate over the past 5 weeks. So I think they're going to give LA a run for their money, but the Chargers still are blocking so exceptionally well, and they've got so many more talented players on offense than the Broncos do, because Broncos really have Sanders, and that's about it on offense. So I'm going to go with the Chargers in that one.
Big Sunday nighter. Minnesota goes to Chicago. Hey, the Bears, 10-week we've reached the double-digit weeks, which typically means you're in this thing, and the Bears are in it. Minnesota's in it. Big game at Chicago. Trubisky's played well. That defense gets a lot of praise. Minnesota's kind of turned their season around after a bumpy start.
The Bears had some problems earlier this year in pass rushing. They did great the first few weeks, and then they faltered, and now they're doing great again. Their pass rush numbers have been fantastic, and they can run the ball very well. They've got a very good blocking rate. Jordan Howard's just not producing very well in the good blocking yards per attempt metric, but they're getting him good blocking. I think Minnesota's got some. Their defense is not quite as good as people think that it is. I've mentioned that many times, and I think Trubisky's just playing at a lights-out pace. So I'll take Chicago home on that one.
Monday night, maybe the game of the year. It's Chiefs and Rams, and obviously two explosive offense. I don't know, is this a question of who plays better defense or who has the better offense and can score more?
I think that's one thing that's going to be surprising, I think, in this game when you look at the matchups, the blocking matchups. The Rams and the Chiefs both have subpar run defenses. They're both of them are not playing well in that area. So I think even though I think it's going to be this aerial show, Goff versus Mahomes, I think it's going to be a lot of Gurley versus Hunt. And if that's the case, and I think it probably will be, I'll take Gurley because the Rams' run blocking has been fantastic. Kansas City's very good blocking, but the Rams' offensive line might be the best in the league. And plus, they also have a few more weapons in the aerial attack than Kansas City does. Kansas City probably has two good receivers, where I think LA has three.
That's your Week 11 slate, maybe the game of the year. Monday night, we'll have it for you live on 97.3 ESPN. Chiefs and Rams, that game is in LA because of the problems with the field in Mexico City. And another good slate of games are maybe one of the better ones. Minnesota-Chicago's a good game. You've also got the Houston-Washington game, two 6-win teams facing off. So a couple of good ones here on the Week 11 slate. Eagles and the Saints, of course, we'll have that game live on 97.3 ESPN. Here's a quick – I know you're a fantasy guy. Here's a quick fantasy question, all right?
Okay.
I've got Brees and Mahomes. What do I do?
Oh, been getting that question a lot. Actually, our questions like that for both these guys. My ESPN quarterback rankings, I got Brees ranked 6th because I think that he's going to throw the ball a lot against Philly. But I think that, again, New Orleans wants to run the ball as much as they can. I don't think they want to have him throwing 40 passes. Mahomes is going to be, even though they're going to run the ball a lot, I think he's going to be still hitting some big plays against the Rams defense that has a lot more, as many question marks I think as Philadelphia does. So I'm picking Mahomes first, but they're both what I call blue-rated quarterbacks, really good prospects.
Yeah, figures. So always got to put myself in that tough spot, right?
Hey, man, that's first world fantasy problems there.
I've won 6 in a row. I'm back in the mix. All right, Casey Joyner. Of course, he'll be back on Monday's show to recap all the Week 11 action and take a closer look at that big Chiefs and Rams game here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Enjoy all the games, Casey.
Appreciate it, man.